Welcome to YQ Academy, SQL, Interview Questions and Answers. 1. What are the authentication modes in SQL Server? How can it be changed? SQL Server supports two authentication modes. 1. Windows Authentication Mode. Windows Authentication. This mode allows users to connect to SQL Server using their Windows credentials. It relies on the Windows operating system for authentication. When Windows Authentication is used, SQL Server validates the user's login information against the Windows accounts and groups. 2. Mixed Mode Authentication. SQL Server and Windows Authentication Mode. This mode allows users to connect to SQL Server using either Windows credentials or SQL Server credentials. It provides flexibility for authentication by allowing both Windows authentication and SQL Server authentication. SQL Server authentication requires a separate username and password stored within SQL Server. To change the authentication mode in SQL Server, follow these steps. Open SQL Server Management Studio (SMS) and connect to the SQL Server instance using a privileged account, e.g., SA account. Right-click on the SQL Server instance and select Properties. In the Server Properties dialog box, go to the Security tab. Under the Server Authentication section, select the desired authentication mode. To enable Windows Authentication only, select Windows Authentication. To enable Mixed Mode Authentication, select SQL Server and Windows Authentication. Click OK to save the changes. Restart the SQL Server service for the changes to take effect. 2. Which command using Query Analyzer can give you the version of SQL Server and operating system? In Query Analyzer, now known as SQL Server Management Studio, you can use the following command to retrieve the version of SQL Server and operating system. This query utilizes the server property function to retrieve various properties of the SQL Server instance, including the version, edition, engine edition, edition ID, update level, update reference, machine name, and operating system. Executing this query will return the desired information in the result set, indicating the SQL Server version and operating system details. 3. What is SQL Server Agent? SQL Server Agent is a component of Microsoft SQL Server that is responsible for automating and scheduling administrative tasks, jobs, and maintenance activities within SQL Server. It provides a centralized job scheduling system that allows you to automate tasks such as database backups, index maintenance, data transformation, and data cleanup. Key features and capabilities of SQL Server Agent. 1. Job scheduling. The SQL Server Agent allows you to define and schedule jobs to run at specific times or on specific events. Jobs can be configured to execute SQL scripts, SQL Server Integration Services (SSIS) packages, or other executable files. 2. Alerts and notifications. The SQL Server Agent can be configured to send alerts and notifications via email or pager in response to specific events or job status changes. This allows administrators to stay informed about critical events and take appropriate actions. 3. Job monitoring and history. SQL Server Agent provides monitoring capabilities to track the execution status, duration, and outcome of jobs. It maintains a history of job execution, including success, failure, and other relevant details. 4. Job steps and dependencies. Jobs in SQL Server Agent can have multiple steps, allowing you to define a sequence of tasks to be executed. You can also define dependencies between jobs, ensuring that a job runs only when its prerequisite jobs have completed successfully. 5. SQL Server Integration Services (SSIS) support. SQL Server Agent seamlessly integrates with SSIS, allowing you to schedule and execute SSIS packages as part of your job workflows. 4. Can a stored procedure call itself for recursive stored procedure? How much level SB nesting is possible? Yes, a stored procedure can call itself, and this is known as a recursive stored procedure. In SQL Server, you can create recursive stored procedures to implement recursive logic or perform recursive operations. When a stored procedure calls itself, It forms a recursive loop where each iteration of the procedure invokes another iteration until a specific condition is met to stop the recursion. This can be useful in scenarios where you need to traverse hierarchical data structures or perform iterative calculations. Regarding the level of nesting in SQL Server, the maximum level of stored procedure nesting is 32. This means that a stored procedure can call itself up to 32 levels deep. However, it's important to use recursion carefully and consider the potential impact on system resources, as deep levels of recursion can consume significant memory and processing power. To ensure efficient and manageable recursion, it's recommended to define a base case or termination condition within the recursive stored procedure. This condition determines when the recursion should stop, preventing infinite loops and controlling the depth of recursion. 5. What is log shipping? Log shipping is a disaster recovery solution in Microsoft SQL Server that involves automatically backing up and restoring transaction logs from a primary database to one or more secondary databases. It provides a way to maintain a warm standby database for high availability and data protection. The process of log shipping involves the following components and steps. 1. Primary database. The primary database is the source database that contains the original data. Transaction logs are generated on the primary database and need to be backed up and shipped to the secondary databases. 2. Secondary databases. The secondary databases are copies of the primary database used for disaster recovery. These databases are typically in a standby mode and are not accessible for read or write operations. Transaction logs from the primary database are applied to the secondary databases to keep them synchronized with the primary database. 3. Backup and copy process. On the primary database, transaction log backups are taken at regular intervals, capturing all the changes made to the database. These transaction log backups are copied to a shared network location accessible to the secondary servers. 4. Restore process. On each secondary server, the copied transaction log backups are restored to the secondary database. The logs are applied in chronological order to maintain consistency with the primary database. 5. Monitoring and alerting. The SQL Server provides monitoring and alerting mechanisms to track the status and health of log shipping. This includes checking the integrity of backup files, monitoring the restore process, and detecting any delays or failures in applying the transaction logs. 6. Name 3 ways to get an accurate count of the number of records in a table. 1. Count function. You can use the count function in SQL to retrieve the number of records in a table. The count function returns the number of rows that match a specific condition or all rows if no condition is specified. Here's an example. This query will return the count of all records in the table. 2. Sys. m_db_partition_stats. Another way to get an accurate count is by querying the sys. The m_db_partition_stats dynamic management view. This view contains information about partition tables and indexes, including the row count for each partition. You can sum up the row counts to get the total record count. Here's an example. This query will give you the total record count for the specified table. 3. sp_spaciest. The sp_spaciest system stored procedure provides information about the space usage of a table, including the row count. By executing this stored procedure for the table of interest, you can retrieve the record count. Here's an example. The result will include the row count along with other space-related information. This is the end of our SQL interview questions. We hope you enjoyed learning with YQ Academy. Until next time, goodbye.